Oh, hi. Yeah, it's funny because fact checking came up, and it came up once before. Well, it's come up lots of times before, after after the 5 years we've had in terms of fact checkers. Most notably, the head of kind of fact checking platform for the British government. She said, "Oh yeah, no, the AI is programmed to look for." Not dissenting, contrary to the narrative. There was some really good word anyway. It's not looking for accuracy, it's set up to look for things contrary to what we once said on the internet. Also, I've been looking, my background in terms of philosophy and my degree, all those philosophy departments in Britain, even the British Library, the philosophy department's gone, all around Ireland gone. Like the whole foundational tenets of Western civilization have gone out the window. So, I mean, we could go on Google, but you won't find anything that I've come across, probably any proof of everything that I've come across. So that's one side of things on the fact checking. And the thing is that I don't think my videos are really there specifically for accuracy. For me, it's I had it written here. What's it called? Public awareness, cultural resistance, and norms design. Um, so it's to kind of wake people up to all the risks, which 90% of them will be like, oh yeah, of course, joining the dots for people. And the other thing is that it's very central to my approach to try and put the onus back on the people who should know what the risks are, should be able to assess and regulate and monitor what could happen, should be sure that the companies and platforms and the technologies that are being approved are in any way safe, or there's going to be some sort of recourse to justice or repayment, or getting yourself out of difficulty for wrongful accusation. At the moment, there's no recourse to anything. So whenever I say something, I'm always saying, is this a risk? And then the onus, I think, absolutely is on governments and people who are profiting from these things to say, right, what we're going to do in this instance is this. This is what the checks we've done. These are the safeguards in place. And if it's like, oh no, that's not the case at all. We're always very rigorous about, for example, Wi-Fi safeguards and testing as to whether they pose a risk. Wi-Fi itself poses a risk to human life, or any animal life, or any sort, life of any sort. They can say, because of this study, which looked at X, Y, Z. So I'm. There's a lot of talk. There was a talk on another channel as well about evidence for this and evidence for that. But I love the sovereignty approach, which is like, we're asking the questions. What are you going to do in this situation? What are you going to do in that situation? And in what way have you prepared as the what's it called? The competent authority. This is what these government ministries call themselves. I was the competent authority on this, and we are the competent authority on that. So let's just see if they are. So another option we've talked about is institutional and regulatory pressure accountability. I think that's where I'm going. I think that I love the concepts of regulation. I love how impossible regulation is for all these technologies and their interaction. It's one of my central defenses against why they should be allowed in on any large scale experimental or defence or emergency permit, or just inexorably come in. Um, so um, so yeah, regulation, the impossibility of regulation, and due diligence, which is financial and operational due diligence. And so I love the idea of putting together an affidavit, um, which says you are not to do X, Y, or Z until you have answered and done a full due diligence study and made it public, on how these sorts of things are not going to happen. These sorts of risks are not going to come about. And not just a little AI one like they did for the GMO mosquitoes, where they said, oh, they identified 52 biohazards, and then they said, oh, but luckily that's a negligible risk. And they weren't a negligible risk. They weren't a negligible risk at all. It was actually every single one of them had already happened. That's how AI was able to identify them in the first place. That's what we're up against. So I think instead of the considering the truth and falsehood or misinformation or risk or proving to have some sort of credibility. We know credibility doesn't work. We know evidence doesn't work 100 million times over. Even the evidence for the harms of the injections or the lockdown or the PCR test, or anything that was said, any of the overreach, any of the expertise and huge amount of peer-reviewed studies that have been dismissed, shut up and buried under the carpet, and the people, stripped of their medical accolades of decades or legal accolades of decades. This isn't really evidence isn't helping. What is actually helping is saying you must be accountable, you must do your due diligence, these are the risks, and we do not consent until we see evidence to the contrary of everything that you've done beforehand. So that's where I was going with it. So to almost juxtapose the idea of due diligence and all the questions that are being raised, which we kind of basically know to be true, or the risks, because they've already come true in other countries and in our own recent background, but to frame them in a really strong legal, lawful document that can go to the ICC.